GameFi has had some seriously hard times over the past year, and I want to delve into what could make Illuvium fail, given it does launch this year, next year, whatever. What could cause it to decline in value, or people to leave a max exodus or anything like that? What could cause it to become a bubble? Now, no one really likes bubbles. You got the dot-com crash, global financial crisis. There are lots of bubbles in the world, and we're potentially in one right now. Obviously, this is not financial advice, but no one really knows what is happening at all in the markets. But I'm going to talk about a few points about the issues Illuvium could face in the future that could cause it to become a bubble and then pop, and then inadvertently crash its entire Illuvium metaverse and ecosystem. Now, of course, I'm still bullish on Illuvium. Many of you probably already know that, but I did want to talk about some of the concerns and risks because I feel like we don't talk about it enough. So the first thing we have to do is what defines a bubble. And in this case, I'm going to use the example of Axie Infinity. So typically the main thing that happens, especially in Axie's case, is that supply outstrips demand. Now, what did this mean for Axie is there was a lot of breeding, there was a lot of minting of tokens with no maximum supply and so on and so forth. And what this meant was that eventually there were so many Axies and not enough players entering the game to buy them that their entire market crashed, and then all of their other markets started to collapse in on itself since SLP had less utility, which was their token that they used to earn rewards in the game. So considering that, the big thing I want to focus on is supply and demand not being in perfect harmony, and they rarely are, but I think utility is a key thing here, and the ability for players to play the game without wanting anything in return. So those are going to be important, but I've got 4 major points that we're going to talk about right now. So the first one is oversaturation of alluvials. Now, there's no breeding in the game, which certainly helps, but you can effectively infinitely mint alluvials that you can go out and keep capturing them as long as you've got money to spend. Now, the money entering the system obviously benefits it long term, but there are a few things to consider. So the first big problem is that millions of players, and I know this sounds weird that millions of players could be a bad thing, but millions of players entering long before future updates, future sets and regions and things like that could actually be really harmful on the system, because it would mean that lots more alluvials are going to be captured before the entire system gets a bit of a refresh and a reboot. So there are going to be lots of alluvials running around, and that could oversupply them comparatively to demand if demand does fall off after, let's say, it had a big run up to begin with. The distribution of stats and chance for hollow alluvials when you're capturing alluvials definitely helps offset this quite a bit. The balance of difficulty to price needs to be in perfect equilibrium. Now, this is a really interesting one. The most important part of their entire system, and I believe Aaron's got some great plans for this, so I'm excited to see them. But the big core structure here is the balance, right? So one of two things could happen. Either alluvials are way too expensive or difficult to capture, and there's no demand because everyone's leaving the game because it's boring or too difficult or a waste of their time and money. Or alluvials aren't scarce enough and there's way too much supply and then they have no resale value, which I know is not the point for many people, but will be the point for a large amount of players, especially in the early days. So it is important that this is in good balance. Incentives for utility is also really, really important. Why I say this is because a great part of Illuvium is you have the different stat distribution. So one atlas you capture might not be the same as another atlas you capture. But this does have one downside. If these stats aren't useful enough and don't have enough utility, then they don't matter very much. So you go from 150 alluvials with thousands and millions of combinations back down to 150 alluvials, right? So the stats need to mean something, and currently the Leviathan Arena and probably the survival mode are really the only 2 key features, even though the ranked mode is going to be the most used mode. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that stat utility for the different variations in alluvials is going to come into play in terms of scarcity for sure. The next thing I want to talk about is limited gear. So it's no surprise that quantity helps with the longevity of a game. Look at World of Warcraft. They've got thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of different swords, axes, armor sets, you name it. They've got it, right? So they've got lots of that, and that helps the longevity of the game for anyone that wants to collect them all, which is really, really interesting. So we don't know how many armor sets and weapons and cosmetic items and things there are, but if there's a limited quantity of these things, it's going to hurt the progression of the game and hurt the retention of the game. So that's really important. But also the speed to release future sets is just as important, right? So if you've got 100 different unique items, but it only takes you a month to release another 20 or 30, then I would consider that really, really fast. And that would completely offset a lot of those concerns, but you never know how many players are going to be in the game. The next concern for Illuvium not living up to its full potential is the final 4 regions. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to have a huge delay or anything, but I will say this. If there is a big hiccup, whether it's a world economic crisis or something else, then it delays those last 4 regions, you might not be able to keep your players. Say you have a lot of millions and millions of players coming in, and then slowly they get bored, and you need to release those regions. But if there is an issue and they can't come out in time, that could cause some serious problems. Same thing with the mobile version of the game will definitely be really important here. As I said before, the new regions will help refresh the attention of the audience and also help bring in new players. Some things that really do a lot of stuff, especially in World of Warcraft, I'll talk about again, is when they release a new expansion pack, a lot of content gets produced by different content creators, media coverage, all the rest of it, and that brings in a whole new group of players and helps players that haven't played it in a while return to the game as well. So this is a really important factor, and getting them out on time is going to be interesting. The last thing I'll talk about, and something that's a little bit less of a problem compared to some of the other stuff, is the lack of volume. So as we've already seen, the current bear market for crypto and stocks and everything in general has shrunk NFT volume. OpenSea is at the lowest volumes it has ever been in pretty much its history at the moment, and that's largely due to Ethereum's decline and the overall bear sentiment in the market. And what this means is the less volume in any given market means the less liquid it becomes. And what happens is you see prices start to decline really quickly. Simply put, if you have a ramp fee and you list it for $50 and there's not enough volume in the market, then no one's going to buy it. And you go, okay, fine, I'll list it for 45 and then 40 and then 35. Eventually someone buys it, but that's a never-ending cycle. So having volume in the market means a lot of players, but a lot of people getting involved with the project in general, even those that aren't playing the game. So having a lot of volume in the market will be really good, and the crypto bull run would hopefully save this, but we don't know when that's going to come, if at all. So this is a really important factor to consider. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I hope it was really helpful. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Please don't forget to drop a like. I really appreciate it. Have a good day, guys.